Hello and welcome to the final lesson for our unit number 2 here. So what are we looking at today? I want you to be able to understand how to convert foreign currency. And I know 9 times out of 10 you're going to go to your smartphone or your Android phone and you're going to use the app and you'll convert the money, and that's fine. What I want you to do though is I want you to see what the app is actually doing for you. Just so you have a feel of how ratios are used. So what's the goal today? I can understand how ratios convert money values. Okay, so that's what we're looking at today. So I have an example here. And what I want you to do for the example is I want to convert money values. So for example, if the Canadian dollar right now, and you can look on the internet or look on the newspaper to find out what Canadian dollar is trading at, and we find, for my example, I'm going to have it trading at $1, or 1 Canadian is worth 90 cents US dollars. So how do we set this up? So I have 2 examples here on this page. The first example is the $40 Canadian is how much US. Well, the given information up here, I know that $1 Canadian, $1, I'll put above Canadian, is worth 0.9 US. Now what information am I given? Well, I know that I have $40 Canadian. So I put the $40 in Canadian. So what is that worth in US currency? So it's just a proportion, similar to what we were doing already. So I know I have Canadian on both sides of the equal sign. So my question is, how did I go from $1 to 40? Well, I multiplied by 40, which means that whatever you do to the one part of the ratio, you do to the other. So I'm going to multiply 40 times 0.9, and what we find is we end up with $36. So therefore, $40 Canadian is 36 US dollars. Okay. So the second example, and the nice thing with this, we've already set up. I know whatever this question is, I know that $1 Canadian is worth 90 cents US. In this question, though, I have 25 US dollars is how much Canadian. So I don't know how much Canadian I have, but I know I have $25 in US currency. So there we are. So this one's a little bit trickier. And this is where you're going to definitely have to use a calculator, because you need to figure out 0.9 times what gives you 25. Okay? So off to the side here, I'm going to put, it's always the same. It's final divided by initial. And that works every time. All right, so the final amount was 25. My initial amount was the 0.9. And how do you know the difference between final and initial? I'll just point this out. Final, I'm going to say, is always on the right side. So this is always my final amount. Keep it simple. What's the initial amount? It is on the left side. Okay, so keep it simple with that. We don't want to make this overly complicated, right? So this side will be our final. And on the other side, whoops, on this side, we're going to call it initial. And you never have to change that, and it will always work. So that being said, you're just using your calculator now to solve that. So I'm going to do 25 divided by 0.9, and I get 27.78. So 27.78 is what I end up with. So that's what I multiplied by. So I multiplied by 27.78. So that means whatever I did to the one, I have to do to the other. So I got to multiply 1 Canadian dollar by 27.78. So then I find that I end up with 1 times 27.78 is 27.78. There you go. So therefore, for this question, 25 US dollars is 27.78 Canadian. And that's it. So we're just extending our skill from yesterday. We were dealing with money, and one of the final topics is converting between foreign currency. Like I said, I know you have a Google app, but in a pinch, I want you to be able to have a skill set that will allow you to do this conversion if it's not available. So last example here is the last set of examples. The euro, EUR, so that's euro. So if you get a chance to go overseas to Europe, they use what we call the euro. Very, very similar to the Canadian dollar in looks. They have coins for their loonies and toonies, and their cash is very similar as well. So I looked on the internet, and it looks like it was trading for $1 for every 60 euro or 60 cents euro. So that gives me my initial pieces of information here. So I know that $1 Canadian, so I'll put that up there, Canadian to 0.6 euro. Now I'm going to read the question. I have 1,200 Canadian, so I'm going on a trip. I'm going to take 1,200 Canadian with me. How many euros am I going to have? All right. So again, you set it up with your multiplication. I know the Canadian matches up. How did 1 go to 1,200? Well, I multiplied by 1,200. And whatever I do to 1, I got to do the other. So I'm just going to get the calculator here, and I'm going to do the 0.6 times 1,200, and we get $720. Or euros, I should say. So 720. All right, there you go. That's all there is to it. So therefore, if you have 1,200 Canadian to take over, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. 1,200 Canadian. Try to make a sentence at least make sense here. 1,200 Canadian is 720 euros. Okay. And last one. What happens if you come home now? So on the way home, I know the exchange rate's still the same, and that's where I'll start. So I know that $1 Canadian is still trading for 60 cents or 60 cents euro. I don't know how much Canadian I have, but I do know that I'm bringing home 250 euros. I really should have spent that on a present for my math teacher, but I didn't. I'm bringing home a bit of money. So how do we do that? We need to figure out 0.6 times what gives me 250. Well, this is that process I said where you go final divided by initial, and that will give you that missing amount. And again, this side is always final, this side's always initial. So final divided by initial, so I'm going to do 250 divided by 0.6. And again, you need to grab a calculator. 250 divided by 0.6. And I get 416.67. 416.67. So 416.67. So that means that I multiplied 416.67 by 0.6. Whatever you do to one, you have to do the same to the other. So I'm going to multiply that one by 416.67. Multiply them by 1, so I don't even need to get the calculator out. 416.67. So just to finish that off, so therefore, if you're going to bring back 250 euros, then you really have 416.67 Canadian, which is kind of nice. So there you go. So that's how you do the conversions. It does not matter what what we're dealing with. So the information will always be given, and that is your one ratio all the time. All right. Not going to be hidden. Same thing back here. When I look at the previous example, 1 Canadian is the 90 cents US dollar. It becomes your very first ratio. Then you read the question to set up your second ratio. And that's it. So that finishes off Unit 2. We'll finish this up. We have a little bit of a project to do and also get ready for a unit assessment. Good luck.